It's time now for Perspective. Today's guest is an artist and performer like no other. A woman determined to shatter preconceptions about disability through experimentation with fashion, technology, music, and now also dance. Viktoria Modesta was born in the USSR and was constantly in and out of hospital with her leg until she elected to have it amputated. A number of years on, to name just a few achievements, her videos have been watched millions of times online. She's played the Snow Queen in the closing Olympic ceremony in London, and now she is the Bionic Showgirl, taking centre stage in the latest offering from Paris's famed Crazy Horse Cabaret. Well, Viktoria Modesta joins me now in the studio alongside Andrée Deissenberg, creative director at the Crazy Horse Cabaret. Thank you both so much for coming on to speak to us here on France 24 today. Can you start by telling me what the idea is behind the show?
Oh, well, why don't you start?
I think the easiest is to start with Viktoria Modesta, which is a huge inspiration to me, to the girls at the Crazy Horse, to many women and men, I think, around the world. Victoria is a person that has an extraordinary history, turned her life around, took charge. For me, she's the ultimate female empowerment. She represents the absolute woman. And she's an amazing artist. She's an inspiring artist with a vision, with an aesthetic universe, with ideas, with thoughts. She's smart, she's gorgeous, she's... what can I say? That's the beginning of the show. Here we go.
High praise indeed. And what about you? What was it that drew you to this project?
I've been a fan of Crazy Horse since I lived in London. I used to come over here all the time. I mean, on the sort of on the outside, I haven't really expected to find myself on the stage of a cabaret. But I think that there's a lot of things that are very similar between us. You know, we both aim to create a very perfect little vision, a fantasy moment for the audience just to completely transport somewhere else. And also, you know, the production is just incredible. And I don't think I've ever seen a show anywhere in the world that encapsulates that perfect chic kind of feeling of just looking at a woman. So, you know, there's a lot of things really. But most importantly, you know, once we started discussing the opportunities and the fact that actually I was able to bring in all of my work as a creative director and as a designer and a musician and all the things that I sort of dipped my toes in, you know, I was like, wow, this is actually going to be really fantastic. And it's an opportunity for me to really sort of like step out of my comfort zone. Because, you know, I think a lot of my previous work has been based on this sort of the strength and kind of like trying to cut through the culture and create like a bit of a wedge. And this is a moment to sort of appreciate everything that's there and be able to step back into more sensual, more kind of dreamy state. So it's kind of a personal challenge, if anything, which is super exciting.
And you spoke just now about those high production values. We can see some of the images behind you there. I know that you use a number of different prostheses in this show. It's rare to hear about prostheses being used in the service of art. Can you tell me how you came up with this idea?
Sure. I mean, so it kind of became a little bit of an accident for me, to be honest, initially, because I had, as you pointed out, I had a very traumatic start, a little bit like any fairy tale story does, you know, things were bad and then we decided to make things better. So when I was in my early teens in London and I just completely got immersed by nightlife culture and characters and avant-garde art and fashion and people like McQueen or Matthew Barney, for example, you know, I really fell in love with the idea of turning yourself into like a conceptual person, into something where you can be your own architect and you're a creator. And so at the age of 20, after the operation, it was a natural step for me initially just to be like, okay, well, I love fashion. I love the idea of transformation. Let's add this to the mix. But it's really when I did the Paralympic closing ceremony that something that felt so natural to me, I realized, you know, the fact that I was wearing a prosthetic didn't make me different, but my perspective on what that means and what I could do with my body and how I could perceive myself was very different. So that kind of started, that kind of like started this whole sort of story really. And when Channel 4 in UK approached me after the Paralympics, you know, they were like, we really, really want to capture more of a cultural angle on what being augmented with an artificial part really means. And this is kind of when we did the monster project of Prototype, you know, which still to this day seems to be like making waves in the world. But for the past few years, since I became a fellow MIT Media Lab, things have kind of progressed even differently. You know, with my limited education when I was a teenager, I sort of didn't fully grasp the concept that actually I really believe in the idea of sort of futurism and how we can imagine ourselves in the future. So the past few years, it's been very different. You know, I've been working with a lot of scientists and technologists and actually a lot of women in the innovation space who are like, yes, let's not make technology just about consumer products. Let's look at how you know, actually, ironically, disability is solving so many problems and is leading the way for us to sort of evolve into the next step where we accept the fact that augmentation with technology is not a bad thing.
You've actually described yourself and your work as post-human before.
I would like, it's a little bit of a term that tends to be very heavily loaded, transhumanism, post-human, all of that stuff. I think definitely post-disability. You know, sometimes people ask me if I see myself as a sort of activist or a spokesperson for that. And, you know, it's a nice byproduct of that. But what I'm really interested in is what do we do and how do we approach the subject after everybody got over it? The fact that, you know, different physical ability exists, it's normal, and what do we do beyond that that is more positive?
And leading on from that, returning to the show at Crazy Horse, typically shows at the Crazy Horse do tend to feature obviously very beautiful women, but there's a sort of homogeny to the sort of beauty that's on show. Do you think with this show you're breaking the mold?
A very good question. There is a homogeny at the Crazy Horse with the body types, but then there's personalities that shine through, that we actually stage, that we let shine through different stories, that the girls act. So there's the physical body that's standardized for a certain aesthetic value for allowing the spectator to transcend a certain degree of nudity, but there's a lot of personality. Bringing in Viktoria Modesta, who is a fantastically beautiful woman just on her own, and just talking also about the personality, the bringing forward and letting shine the universe, the world, the ideas is what really interests us. And that's also at the Crazy Horse. It's dancers which also bring across different stories, different, just touch different subject matters in their own way.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, the girls are actually so different. It's interesting when you come to see the Crazy Horse show, you kind of think that they're all the same, and they're so different. And I think that, you know, we at the time of sort of political correctness and inclusivity, which is very dear to me, I think that you know, we must not get carried away and still be able to appreciate the aesthetic, because I think that the concept of the girls all looking the same, doing synchronized choreography, is really stunning, and you can't take away from that. And, you know, there is a lot of, I think that where you can, where Crazy Horse is able to put in sort of unusual act in between, I think that they're doing a very great job at keeping it very diverse.
And it certainly looks like an absolutely stunning show. Thank you both so much for coming on to speak to us.
Thank you. We hope to see you at the show.
Well, give me a ticket.
That's right.
I will. I have your production manager's number.
Consider me there. Thank you both so much for coming on to speak.
Thank you so much. Thank you.